Hello, everyone. I'm Asha Nayaswami, and I'm here with my friend Jitendra. And we're going to be talking about his spiritual journey and how he came to live at Ananda village, which is where he's speaking from where he's speaking from to us now. Okay, got all those words together. Jitendra and I met on the East Coast, I believe, and he was living there when I went to visit New York City, Boston, and the Rhode Island group. That was just a few years ago. So he's a new friend compared to others, but not on the soul level. So my friend Jitendra, tell me about who you were before you found Master. What were you doing with your life? Where did you grow up? What kind of a young person were you? Tell me some of those stories.
It's nice to be with you today, Asha, on Swami Ananda's birthday, which I think is such a joy to be able to spend time with you, and how this is a special time to be with you because of just Swamiji's presence is so alive and flowing through you for all of us. So thanks for having me with you. Yeah, so I was born Adam Guindon, which many people thought was a very spiritual name, being born as Adam. But we all know the story of Adam and Eve, so I don't know what light that puts me in, but I think that I grew up in Rhode Island, and I grew up originally on a farm, actually, and it was a really nice. I grew up in the woods. I was always very in tune with nature. And I think when I was growing up in the 80s, things were a lot simpler then than they are now, with technology, and all of that hadn't really exploded on the scene yet. So I lived a very simple life, grounded in nature, and grew up in Rhode Island. I have one sister also that I grew up with. And then, as time fast forwarded, I
want to stop for just a moment.
Sure.
Is there any spirituality in your home? Did you have any sense when you were in nature? Did you have any sense of spirit, or was it just the natural world that attracted you?
I mean, I grew up Catholic, and my parents felt a sense of responsibility to bring me to church on every Sunday. So I grew up going through all of the steps of being baptized, with leading up to my confirmation, and spent a lot of time, Sunday school every week, and grew up in the Catholic Church. Nature for me I wasn't aware of what nature was feeding me, I think, growing up, except for I recognized that there was a sense of calmness and a sense of expansion.
Did you feel a relationship with Jesus, or was church really meaningful to your heart, or was it just something that you did?
It's a really good question that I think I'm still, it's still unfolding. But when I look back and remember, not so much with my mind, but with my heart, I could feel Christ's presence. There was a lot of vagueness that kind of was surrounding it, but when I look back, I did feel that that familiar, sacred scent, of Christ's presence in the church. And it was only after Guruji awakened my heart that I recognized, I knew Christ even then.
What's so fascinating sometimes is to see how God was taking care of us when we didn't know it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that I can't say, though, that I had any awareness of God's presence until the door opened from Guru's blessings.
So what happened, when you went through high school? Did you go to college? What happened during those years of your life?
So out of high school, I was very focused on going into the military. I was primarily really focused on being a part of the honor guard. So the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which, if you're familiar with in Washington, D.C., that was my passion. And however, I couldn't get in because of my height. So that closed that door a little bit. So I figured, well, I should probably, I didn't have any interest in going into the military to go to war or anything. I was just attracted to that process of honoring and ceremony and refinement and all of that and discipline.
We have to stop for just a moment. Why? Why did it attract you so much? Do you have any idea?
I can't say I do. I think that my heartbeat at the time craved a sense of, well, I mean, to say that I was in junior ROTC in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I did a lot of drill team, and I did things with as being a part of the honor guard, doing ceremonies. And I feel like then it was the hints of the devotion in my heart that was coming out, because we would be doing a ceremony and I could feel the devotion in my heart for this ceremony awakening. And so I would just start to cry, and because it was so beautiful to be giving oneself in a refined, disciplined, and honoring something that was that had served, that had served either mankind or served the country. But that process is what I think attracted me.
There was an ideal there, the highest ideal you could see at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. Mm-hmm. But I know that the honor guards have to be quite tall, and you're not.
Exactly. So there was actually even a recruiter that because I used to compete also internationally. I used to go to competitions, which, teams from all around the world would compete, and, our team used to win. And so I gained people were interested in me. As it's interesting that even in that realm that there's scouts, like people look out for potential people. So I had people interested in wanting to see if they could create some shortcut for me to get into, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier or something, but it just never really passed because I was just too short. Taller shoes wasn't going to cut it.
So what did you do then, if that dream wasn't going to come to fruition?
So I grew up as an athlete. So I grew up playing baseball, basketball. My life was spent as an athlete. And in high school, when the military, the focus was there, I still hadn't been told that it wasn't going to work out because of my height. So I started surfing when I was about 14. Mm-hmm. It didn't get more serious until maybe halfway through high school, mm-hmm. where I bought my first surfboard. My sister got her license. And so surfing just completely consumed everything. It just was a quick shift from the military to surfing is the primary focus of the rest of my life. It was all consuming.
So there is no logical relationship between the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and the surfboard.
We'd have to be here for a while to try to find it.
Except it created the same passion. So your desire was to have a passion. Okay, so now we're surfing. Now we're surfing a lot. Uh-huh. Yeah. so go on with. So now we're surfing. Uh-huh.
So now we're surfing, and I was still somewhat interested in the military before I completely walked away from that as a possibility. Uh-huh. So I was asking questions about, if I join the military, will I be able to surf? That was my primary focus, And they said, no, like, who knows? It's like, you're not going to get your cup of tea and, go surf, Adam. Yeah, that's fine. So I thought, well, then that's not for me, because the center here now is surfing. I actually, what it is I actually felt at that time that I had found my true self through surfing.
So tell me why. What is it about surfing that can become so all-absorbing, and tell me why it was your true self?
Because it doesn't take long and I think, of course, many people report similar experiences through rock climbing or parasailing, but in surfing, there's a grace in the ocean, I think. But what it did and what it does, I think, is it brings you to a point of stillness, and it brings you deep into the present moment. And then, of course, once you're in that present moment, so many things become revealed. And so for me, I still remember the first wave that I ever caught, that I truly, really tapped into the essence of the mother's power, in the ocean. And it created a thrill that was just beyond anything that I had ever experienced. But it was a thrill that was not outwardly experienced. It was an inner experience. And so I think that's really what the catalyst was, which that changed my life.
Because you discovered an expansive inner world. Would that be the way to say it? Is that why it changed it?
I experienced something that I recognize was that the ocean and surfing was a part of helping create it, but I recognized that there was something inside that had been revealed, which was a part of myself, part of who I actually am.
Okay. So now we're not in the military anymore. We're surfing. We finished college. We finished high school. Did you decide to go to college, or did you skip college? What did you do?
I did. I decided to go to college because it would support my surfing. So I went to college, but there was also at that time a growing desire to seek truth. And so once I got into college, it was probably after a few months when I recognized that I think I'm aware now of what the answer to my suffering, the answer to all my questions, which is truth, knowledge, wisdom. And so I quickly became very focused on college. And I was a part of the nerd herd, actually, in college. We called ourselves the nerd herd, which we always, a healthy competition of, who could get the best grade. But just really I really gave everything. To my college experience was not like, it wasn't the party days. It wasn't, I actually had quite the opposite experience than many students in college, I think. I had to work a full-time job to support myself through college. I wore a tie, to school every day because I was focused on recognizing that I needed to become free. I recognized the soul bondage that was there. And so I knew I wanted to be free. And I thought the answer was through wisdom and knowledge. So I just gave everything to college and focused on psychology and was on track. I was actually heading into graduate school and wanted to live my life as a clinical psychologist. And my desire was to save drug addicts. That was basically my deep desire that was feeling.
Had you been a drug addict, or did you just have a feeling for those souls?
Yeah, I never really did any drugs in my life. It was my family too. I don't have any background of that, but there was just this deep desire. I don't know if it was reflecting specifically as drug addicts as the focus, but it was more of, I recognized a group of people that were suffering. And my heart just became all consumed with wanting to try to help them and to save them. And so that was my focus. That, of course, who knows with previous lives, I'm sure there's some scars there.
So you've got all the way, you said you were on track to go to graduate school. So did you actually finish your undergraduate degree?
Yeah, so I finished college, my 4-year degree.
I want to pause for just a second.
Sure.
You're looking for truth. You think that wisdom is the answer. You made a reference to suffering. Were you an unhappy person, or was it more of just the philosophical idea of it?
I was a very happy person. In fact, my life, many people would say I was, the cool surfer, laid back, fun guy and I had lots of fun and I had really good friends and my family were supportive always of everything I wanted to do. I always lived in nice places and, I never really had money, but I never really saw money as a source of happiness in my life. But I could feel my soul. I could feel underneath this layer, this undercurrent of suffering when I grew up though, early on, I recognized that my suffering really came from one place. When I was young, especially, it grew in intensity in my teenage years where I always felt this deep sadness. Outwardly, I was Mr. Happy and joyful and the fun kid, but underneath, I could feel this ocean of this pain or like sadness. And I was always wondering, what is that? What is that? And it wasn't until later when I got on the path that I recognized that I think what I experienced was that my suffering was that I could feel an ocean of love within me, just this vastness of love. But I felt that I could not share it with anyone, nor did I ever feel anyone could really reflect back to me that love or validate that. And then once I got on the spiritual path, the door opened and it was just, when the guru came, it all became clear. So that was my suffering.
So let's back up just a little. We know the end of the story. It's just that the guru rescues you. So let's run a couple of more of the chapters. During this time that you're in college, did it occur to you that spirituality was the answer? Or did you just think it was because you're there, you're part of the nerd herd studying in school? Are you thinking about God at all? When did the idea of spirit enter into the equation?
And I think that I've always been interested in God to some extent, but in college I was kind of on track with clinical psychology, but I also double majored in philosophy. I was very interested in philosophy. I was very interested in deeper questions. Who am I? What's this all for, really? And I took a metaphysics course. I believe I was a junior in college. I don't recall if it was junior year or my last year. And one of the questions that was a focus for half of the semester was, does God exist? And, I look back now at just speaking to you that was a big moment, because as I sat down, I think that I was very interested in what the answer was. We spent the whole 2 months or whatever it was, breaking down all the philosophers and the logic and all of this. We never really got to a point of proving nor disproving the answer to this question. But I remember the last day in this metaphysics class, I was walking away saying goodbye to everyone, and I felt to double back and go into the office of my professor, who was this like 90-year-old philosopher. And I just sensed he had something. He had a knowledge that I knew I was interested in. So I went back and I said, can I ask you a question before we say goodbye? And he said, sure. And I said, what do you think the answer to that question is? And he thought for a few moments, and he was kind of thinking about different philosophers, but then it came back to, I was saying, what do you think? I know we studied all these philosophers, but I wanted to know what you think. And he said to me, he said that, he said, it's something that I could never find any logic or any information to disprove it. He said that I feel, and he kind of had a twinkle in his eye when he said, I feel that it is true. So that was just I think a special moment. But other than that, I didn't go much deeper.
So when did spirituality and or Yogananda enter your life? How did that happen?
That was, so I graduated college in 2003. And as I was graduating, I recognized one morning, I was waking up, I had a job that I had to get up really early to get to the market where I worked. And I remember waking up, this was perhaps a few weeks before I was graduating, and I put my feet on the ground, and I swung my legs over the bed, and I looked down at my feet before standing up, and I just thought, I had this moment. And, because I was very involved with research, and I basically had, my graduate studies taken care of. I mean, with full ride, just everything was all set up for me as a very successful path. But I woke up that morning and I felt instantly, this is not my path. Yeah. There's something that's not who I am, and there's something more trying to happen. So I immediately heard that voice and I pulled the plug, went into my professors who were backing me on this, amazing journey ahead. And I said, it's not who I am. It's not my path. So then I thought, well, what do? So I thought, I packed my surfboards and I moved to New Zealand. And that was, I thought, the answer. It's like, and everyone's thinking their mouth was dropped. Like, what are you doing, throwing all this away? And I thought, I have to find myself, I have to find what that voice was. And so I took off and I ended up living in New Zealand. And that's when I started meditating in 2003. Randomly, didn't know what I was doing, but I remember trying to meditate on my bed and having really deep, profound surfing experiences in New Zealand, which was the beginning of the process of awakening for me.
So when did Master enter your life, and how did he come in?
He came in 2005, 6. And a long story short, I'll kind of one sentence this. From New Zealand, I ended up moving back to Rhode Island and really diving into art. So I started pursuing a film career as well as a music career. And the band that I was in, we moved to New York City, and I was pursuing a full-time film career, which I was always very interested in film and doing music. So I was really diving into a film career, which really picked up quite quickly. And I really became immersed in that scene. And getting into a relationship that caused the earth to shake. And that relationship was what had me seek the answer of like, what do I do with this? And that led me to a very, very dear friend of mine, Kelly Doyle, which I know you know her too.
Yeah.
And I was doing some healing work with her, and she gave me the Autobiography of a Yogi and said, I think you should read this. And a week later, she said, I think you might be interested in Ananda, because at that time, Ananda had a community in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And so I remember going to a Sunday service, and it was a couple of weeks after going to Ananda and reading the AY, which was a struggle. The AY I wasn't up, all night reading it. It took me a year to read the Autobiography of a Yogi. And then that's when, during an experience that I had at Ananda, I felt the door open, and the rest of my life was given to him.
But Master didn't catch you right away. You had to, it wasn't like some people say, oh, I saw the picture on the cover and that was that. So
Yes.
it was the principles were too different than the way you'd been living. What was it that you struggled with at the beginning? It's truthful that more people come into it slowly than come into it quickly. That's more natural. Only a few are just instantaneous. So what took you a year to read the book?
Well, I remember the first sessions of reading the Autobiography. Right away, I think I had a resistance to the word God because of my upbringing with the Catholic Church. And I wasn't interested in yoga. I didn't know anything about it, wasn't that interested in it. But as I was reading the book, I think it was not too far into it, perhaps a few pages or at least one chapter, where I thought, no, I don't know, this word God. I trusted my friend with her, introducing things that might help awaken me, but I was like, I don't know. But there was always this booming voice saying, just keep reading.
Really?
You don't have to believe any of this, but just don't doubt. Don't doubt it, but just keep reading. Just keep reading. And that booming voice was just, it was loud enough where I was like, okay. And that's what kept me going. And it needed to be there after some time, of course, I was reading the book, and it took me so long, not because I was doubting at that point, but rather it was so intense for me that I couldn't just fly through it like a book. It was an intense, it had an intense presence, I think. So it took me time to digest it.
And then you said you had an opening experience when you were at Ananda in Rhode Island. Something came into your heart? How would you express what happened to you there?
There was a Sunday service that many people weren't there at. So we sat in like a little semicircle, and they had a very large picture of Master of the Last Smile. And I just remember I hadn't really felt in my heart yet, Master enter, until this one day where we were sitting there meditating, and there really wasn't anything that was the catalyst except just opening my eyes and looking at the photograph. It just felt like I felt the door, open. And it was just this waterfall of his presence and his love. And it put me in a state of just a new state of awareness that I was just feeling my heart overwhelmed. And I was wondering, is this a sign? Is this a sign that you're my guru, and that, like, what do I do with this? Do I trust this? And so I asked him, I said, help me confirm that this is something that's real and that this is my life. And so after that, we went in for lunch, and there was a boy that came in, a son of one of the Ananda members, who I'd never met before, never saw him. At the time, I was in a band looking for a drummer, and that was sort of a big focus. So he walked in, immediately this voice came in and said, "That's your drummer. Ask him to be your drummer." And, my life before that had never been led through intuition or these things. So it was very new. And this voice that had been there with, encouraging me to read the AY was a new voice. And so I thought, I'm not going to ask him that. And he didn't look like a drummer. He didn't smell like a drummer. There was nothing pointing to him as a drummer. So he sat down, and I was nervous, and, but then that voice was, "He's your drummer. Ask him to be a drummer." And so I said, "This might be a little, awkward, but do you play music?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a drummer." And, he was looking for a band, and we ended up actually having a really nice time together, playing music. But that was the day where it was like, I'm real, I'm real, and I'm with you, and I'm in you, and I'm guiding you. Trust me. And so that was the first launching point, which I think that was in 2006 that happened. So.
Oh my goodness, what a wonderful story. So you stayed on the East Coast with Ananda for a while. When did you shift over to the West Coast? When did that happen?
Well, in 2012, I went to India with Swamiji. That's when I...
Well, let me back up a little bit. When did you meet Swami Kriyananda in all of this?
I met Swami the first time in 2007, 2008, when I came to the village. And
did you have any first impression of him? Or when did you have a first impression of Swami? It might not be your first meeting, but when did it come?
I think the first meeting.
Okay.
It was an interview that I had with him, which, Asha, you were there for that. I think it was around 4th of July. And I don't know. After that meeting with him, spending the few hours that we spent with him, I just felt my life completely changed. In fact, I took discipleship right after that meeting with Swamiji. We went into the chapel, and I took my discipleship. I had inwardly been living as a disciple, but I wanted to make sure it was the right time and for my discipleship ceremony. And so, but my impression at the time was, of course, I didn't recognize who he truly was. All I could say is I was in a state of as I like to say, forever familiar and forever unknown. That's just what I kind of felt with him. I felt I was in a fog of higher consciousness with him, so I didn't have any thoughts, or I couldn't, as he said, I couldn't have any impressions of Yogananda. The same with Swami. It was just overwhelming, really, to be in his presence.
So we're going to have to leave out what I'm sure are some very interesting chapters here. But you said then you went to India in 2012. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. So you went to India. I started to ask you how you got to the West Coast, and then you told me you went to India first, which is not exactly a direct route, but you came to Rhode Island through New Zealand, so a lot of things happened.
Exactly. Well, India was responsible for really, I think, bringing me to the village.
I
I
see.
came to the village in 2014,
Uh-huh.
and being in India in 2012 really helped. I think was really the of how I came west,
Did
basically.
you go, did you go to the Pune community where Swami was living in 2012? Is that where you were?
I traveled a bit in India, but then landed in Pune with Swami.
Right. So were you part of that? So that was the very austere, sort of primitive living period of that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't have I mean, I got very, very sick in India. I got typhoid. And so it was my India experience for a lot of it was really just, I was there to purify. In fact, when I said goodbye to Swamiji, because I just wasn't getting better after months and months being in Pune on the land where, it was very primitive, and I could feel the call was to come back to America. And when I said my last meeting with Swamiji, he said, India has not been kind to you, has it? But he said it with a smile, meaning he knew,
Uh-huh.
I was purifying. It was a really deep time of purification, but that was really what was needed. Because then from India, I came back to America, and that's when the monastery started basically here at the village. And so I basically was trying to live, as a monk in India, but that wasn't working out. So then I came here. I had to recover. It took me a year and a half to recover from the typhoid.
Yeah.
It was a big blow to my health. But then as soon as I had started to gain my energy, I came here in 2014.
Very, very, very good. And now you live at the village.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the work that you do there now?
So I serve the work online here,
Uh-huh.
and it's a wonderful team that we have that Dion, Sagar, myself, Anna, Naba, Pranaba, a
Yeah.
whole big team that we primarily share Guruji's teachings online with a virtual community that we have, almost 300 people from about 30 different countries around the world. Path of Kriya, we right now have 2 cohorts of students from about 20, 30 different countries, where we have about 300 plus students right now who are in lessons in meditation. And so we're supporting individuals' journey in receiving Kriya, and just giving lots of energy through this virtual world of online. But it's been remarkable since 2014, coming here and serving online. It's been such a blessing and so humbling to see the power and the grace that's pouring into this world right now, and just seeing how people's lives change. Even after the first month of lessons in meditation, they open the door to their heart, and Master enters and Swamiji blesses them, and their life changes. So I get to be a part of that and seeing that unfold. So I'm very grateful to Swami and to Master for having me serve online.
I'm just so happy for you. And you had your period of monasticism, and now you're living as a single man in the community, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
You've worn a lot of different costumes in the years that you've been around, haven't you?
I have. Asha, help me.
No, it's just, one of the things that happens is karma accelerates, and we just, you commit yourself completely, you run it until the energy shifts in a new way. Yeah. So, my friend, what does being a disciple mean to you? How would you define it? What does it mean to you?
I mean, there's a lot that I could say about that, but I think it's about love. I mean, it's really it comes down to a purity of love, offering to that one place in your heart, and as an extension, everything you do and everyone and everything is that pure just desire to give of oneself to the Guru. And I think that's, yeah,
Wonderful. That's
in
absolutely,
short.
that's perfect, Jitendra. Thank you so much for sharing with me. That's really quite a fun story. Congratulations, my friend.
Yeah, the journey continues, and it's just very beautiful to see all that, Master has been bringing into my life from day one to this day. Everything he's giving me is just helping with discipleship, helping with my heart, just
Yeah.
opening and expanding, and that's why I'm here.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you, my friend. Lovely to share with you.
So nice to be with you, Asha.